chapter number 40, and we'll start in verse number 25 down to the end. To whom then will ye liken me, or shall I be equal, saith the Holy One. Lift up your eyes on high, and behold, who hath created these things, that bringeth out their host by number. He calleth them all by names, by the greatness of his might. For that he is strong in power, not one faileth. Why sayest thou, O Jacob, and speakest, O Israel, my way is hid from the Lord, and my judgment is passed over from my God? Hast thou not known, hast thou not heard, that the everlasting God, the Lord, the creator of the ends of the earth, fainteth not, neither is weary. There is no searching of his understanding. He giveth power to the faint, and to them that have no might he increaseth strength. Even the youths shall faint and be weary, and the young men shall utterly fall. But they that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings as eagles. They shall run and not be weary, and they shall walk and not faint. Let us pray. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for your word and for all the things that you teach us in our lives. We ask that you would teach us now, that you would use your word, and you would speak through me and touch hearts in this room, and that you would show each of us what we need to know and how we ought better to be able to live for you. We ask now that you would speak, and that these would be your words. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. I recognize most of the people in here. There's one or two I haven't seen before, or haven't seen for a while. So a lot of you are more or less aware kind of what's going on in our lives at present. So basically, just a rehash for those who aren't so up on it. Long and short of it is, a couple months ago, we thought, life was smooth, life was carrying on, and yeah, we were looking around thinking maybe buy a house, maybe put some roots down deep, and short version, we'd pretty much no sooner decided that than, well, there goes the job, and so now we're looking at moving down thousands of miles away, down to the States, and so there's the job hunt, there's the packing, there's problems with the landlord, that's a whole other story. There's all these things going on, and then my wife, she's British and Canadian, but that's no permanent status in the U.S., so there's government paperwork and all these things. And, just a lot of it can be really, really frustrating, really, really overwhelming. I think a lot of people, a lot of men, myself, we like to know exactly what's going on. We like to have, the finger on the pulse, so to speak, the hands on the steering wheel. We prefer that option. And so, a lot of what I'm going to speak on this morning, this idea of waiting on the Lord, it's not so much something that I've learned as something that I'm learning. This is a work in progress. I'm not standing up here saying, oh yes, I figured out how to wait on the Lord. It's like, no, I understand the principles. Then comes the practice, and that's another matter entirely. And so that's ongoing. And so these are just things that the Lord's been showing me, things God's been teaching me in my life. And, there's transitions going on here. We just lost our pastor. Big things are happening around here. Things that are beyond our control. And, people are having to step up and do jobs they haven't done before. Shuffle what our normal is. And so, this is just something that the Lord was going over this last week and the week before, and it's like, oh man, I've been asked to preach. What in the world am I going to speak on? And so as time went by, it's just, how about just go over what I've been learning in my life recently. Let's just go over what God's been showing to me. And so, verse number 31, as was said before, and as Kai mentioned, it's they that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. And I've known that verse pretty much my whole life. You see it in the nice little murals on the wall, and it's got the picture of the eagle, and it's got the verse. But what speaks to me, at least as much as the verse we're all familiar with, is the context of it. Just realizing, this verse isn't just sitting there all by itself, wait on the Lord and be renewed. Thanks, Matt. Because it is a very powerful verse, and it is, in fact, the punchline of the chapter. But it's like we've heard the punchline so many times, we've forgotten the joke. We forgot the story that this is actually the crucial part of. And I just want to back up one verse there. Back 2 verses, 29 and 30. Speaking about the Lord and, how great he is. And it says, he giveth power to the faint, and to them that have no might he increaseth strength. Even the youth shall faint and be weary, and the young men shall utterly fall. But they that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings as eagles. They shall run and not be weary, and they shall walk and not faint. So, verse 30, the youths, the young men. To my mind, I think of soldiers in training. These are people in their prime. Physically speaking, they're as strong as it's possible to be. And they are fainting, and they are falling. But they that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. When it goes past the point of, when it goes past the point of what's physically capable, God can do more. That's the point. And I think we forget that a lot of times, just as we see the nice little mural on the wall. And don't get me wrong, I like eagles, I'm all into birds, so, I'm all in favor of those, but, remember the deeper meaning of it. That's not actually in my notes, that was a little side thing. Okay, so I wanted to start, if that's the correct word, with a little quote I've heard, and I apologize because I don't have a source for it, I don't know who it's from. Has it ever occurred to you that nothing ever occurs to God? And it's an interesting little quote because it's basically, things don't catch God by surprise. See, that's the human element. As humans, things catch us off guard. It's like, wow, where did this come from? It's just completely right out of left field. Wasn't expecting it, completely blindsided me. That doesn't happen to God. Ever. And so, as part of waiting on the Lord, that's something to be aware of, to think about. Okay, so now we're up to the introduction. Sorry. In our lives, we're often faced with difficult and challenging situations which bring uncertainty and doubt into our lives. Things like losing a relative, losing a job, moving, dealing with government paperwork, starting a new life in a different country or culture. There's a lot of people in this room who know that one. A lot of people in this room. Transitions in church leadership. We all know that one right now. At times like this, we face fear of the unknown. We're unsettled. We're thrown out of our comfort zone. Nothing is carrying on the way we're used to. We're required to do things that aren't normal or easy for us. There's a strong inclination to worry, to panic, to be utterly overwhelmed. We may even reach the point of distress. Everybody's heard of stress. It's a common word. It's like, wow, this is so stressful. I spilled my milk. Now I have stress in my life. It's like, yes, that's stress. But distress is more than that. Distress is stress that's gone to the point that it's almost impossible to reverse. That's distress. Distress is a whole nother level, and we don't hear about stress in the Bible, but we hear a lot about distress. And that's the big one. That's like stress that's gone way too far. And two people I want to talk about in terms of that. And the first one is David. David experienced a lot of distress. I mean, let's face it, if the leader of your country was trying to kill you, that would probably bring you a lot of distress. And that was just the beginning for David. I mean, the amount of stuff he had going on in his life, because then later on in his life, it was his son trying to kill him. And, that's a complete another sermon, but, David had a lot of things go on that really pushed him past normal recoverable stress into that distress. Life really is ending. I don't just think it's ending, it's actually ending. Psalm chapter number 4. Psalm chapter number 4, and I'm just going to buzz through a couple verses here, so follow along if you can, and otherwise I'll just read them out. Psalm chapter 4 and verse number 1. Hear me when I call, O God of my righteousness. Thou hast enlarged me when I was in distress. Have mercy upon me and hear my prayer. And then Psalm chapter number 6. I'll read down the whole thing here. Now, some of this, if I remember correctly, is a bit of a foretelling of Christ's suffering. But I'll just read down through it. David's describing how the distress he's in, it's physically affecting him. It's affecting his physical health because, he's under so much pressure in his mind. Psalm 6, to the chief musician on Neganoth upon Shimoneth, the Psalm of David. O Lord, rebuke me not in thine anger, neither chasten me in thy hot displeasure. Have mercy upon me, O Lord, for I am weak. O Lord, heal me, for my bones are vexed. My soul is also sore vexed, but thou, O Lord, how long? Return, O Lord, deliver my soul. O save me for thy mercy's sake. For in death there is no remembrance of thee. In the grave who shall give thee thanks? I am weary with my groaning. All the night make I my bed to swim. I water my couch with my tears. Mine eye is consumed because of grief. It waxeth old because of all mine enemies. Depart from me, all ye workers of iniquity, for the Lord hath heard the voice of my weeping. The Lord hath heard my supplication, and the Lord will receive my prayer. Let all mine enemies be ashamed and sore vexed. Let them return and be ashamed suddenly. So there's a few verses in there that kind of foreshadow where we're going with this. But the main point I'm wanting to see right now is just, his distress, it's affecting him. He's in a lot of distress. Psalm 18, verse number 5. It's an interesting thing. I got to reading through the Psalms, studying for this, and just realizing, this is just a small smattering. The amount of material in the Psalms that's about distress and about David going to the Lord to seek help during those times of distress, it's a lot of the Psalms. It's good reading, I recommend. 118:5. This is David again. I called upon the Lord in distress. The Lord answered me and set me in a large place. I'll leave the second half of that alone for now, but that's kind of where we're going with this eventually. And then Psalm 120, and verse number 1. In my distress, I cried unto the Lord, and he heard me. And so I guess through all that, I just kind of want to re-emphasize this distress. It's not stress. It's more than stress. Like, this isn't David woke up and somebody burnt the coffee. No. This is probably, he's living in a cave and he can hear guys outside who want to kill him. It's that level. And this is where he's at, and as we've already seen a little bit there, it's the Lord he turns to in this. Job. Let's talk about Job for a little bit. Job chapter number 16 is where we're going to end up reading. Job 16. used to do quizzes with the kids and whoever got their first got a prize. I'm tempted. Job's distress. Job was also in distress. I mean, what do we know about Job? We know that he went through some really, really, really hard times in his life. You know, sometimes you'll be out talking to people, trying to witness to somebody, trying to share about your faith, and, you know, what is it that somebody, sometimes earnestly, sometimes they're just trying to be a jerk, but what is it that people throw back at you? It's something to the basic effect of, well, why do bad things happen to good people? And yes, you can go the route of, well, actually nobody's good, blah, 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 blah. But the general idea remains. It's like, you know, why do people who are trying to do the right thing, who are doing this, why does hardships happen to them? And actually, Job is the answer to that. That's what the book of Job is about. And if I understand correctly, a lot of people think that Job was actually the first book of the Bible written. So it's in the middle of the Bible, but it was written before Moses. If you disagree with that, I have no authoritative whatever on that. But, you know, it's an interesting thought. It's that question, which people still throw at you, was probably the first thing God addressed. Interesting thought. So, Job. So he's there, he's the richest guy in the land, everything's going great. He loves God, he worships God. He's, you know, pretty much everything is going right in Job's life, which you would argue it should be, because Job is doing everything right. I mean, his kids going out of a party at their sibling's house, and Job goes and offers sacrifices just in case they do something wrong while they're at the party over there. He's doing just in case offerings. It's like, this guy is squared away. He's covering all the bases. He's got it sorted out. And, you know, God's impressed with him. The devil shows up at this meeting of the angels, and God says to the devil, hey, have you looked at Job down there? He's a pretty good guy. He's squared away. And then what's the devil's response? He says, well, yeah, of course he is, because you're doing everything for him. Which, that's not true. That's not how God works. But that was the devil's response. And so God comes back and he says, well, all right then. If you think he only worships me for the stuff, you can take what you want. Do what you want, and I'll bet you he'll still worship me. It's basically this little back and forth between the Lord and Satan. And interesting thing, I'm sure there's theological something there somewhere, but the fact is, Job's just on earth. He's not privy to any of this stuff going on. He's just there. Everything's going on. Life is smooth. All is great. And then basically, bang, 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 he gets 3 runners come in. And one says, well, you're not a billionaire anymore. Then the next one comes in and says, you're not a millionaire anymore. And the next one comes in and says, you're broke. And somebody else comes in and says, and by the way, all your family's dead. And then he starts having boys. Like, okay, life just turned south real fast. So he's lost his family. All his kids are dead. His wife's still alive, but you could argue he's lost her too, because what's her response? She says, how long will you hang on to your integrity, curse God and die? She's saying, you know, it's gone, everything's gone, there is no reason to live. Why are you still insisting on hanging on to your integrity? Why are you still insisting on trying to serve God the way you know you should? There's no reason to anymore. All the reasons are gone. Just die. His friends are gone. The only 3 he has left. And it's an interesting thing. I don't know on this one way or the other, but I've heard some people say, maybe those 3 friends that are kicking around were the same 3 runners that brought the bad news. I don't know if that's true or not, but who knows. Anyway, they certainly seem to have nothing but bad news the whole time they were around. It's like, you've got everything's gone wrong. You've got 3 friends left, and they're basically taking turns saying, it's your fault. You've done something terrible. Confess it. And he's like, I know I'm not perfect, but I also know I haven't done anything that could possibly, they're saying, obviously you've committed some massive, horrible sin somewhere that was worth all this happening to you. And Job's like, no. Okay, maybe I did some minor little whatever, but definitely didn't do anything that was deserving of that. Everything's gone. In the beginning of the book, he's wealthy, he's healthy, he's one of the judges of the land. I mean, he's, in his world, he's somebody. People need advice. It's like, how do I do this? Find out when you can book in an appointment with Job. It's probably going to be 6 months from now, but you need to get to him as fast as you can see him and ask him about this issue in your life. That's who he was. And then suddenly, boom, all gone. And so, to say that he's in distress is probably an understatement. So, that gets us to chapter number 16 of Job. And I'm going to read the whole thing here. Then Job answered and said, I have heard many such things. Miserable comforters are ye all. Shall vain words have an end, or what emboldeneth thee that thou answerest? I also could speak as ye do, if your soul were in my soul's stead. I could heap up words against you, and shake mine head at you. But I would strengthen you with my mouth, and the moving of my lips should assuage your grief. So Job's speaking to his 3 friends after they've had, about 15 chapters to chew him out and say, you've obviously done horrible things. And he's basically saying, you guys are really, really bad as comforters. If roles were reversed, yeah, I could do this to you, but I wouldn't. I'd be there trying to build you up, trying to encourage you, trying to comfort you. Verse number 6. Though I speak, my grief is not assuaged, and though I forbear, what am I eased? But now he hath made me weary, thou hast made desolate all my company. But thou hast filled me with wrinkles, which is a witness against me, and my leanness rising up in me beareth witness to my face. He teareth me in his wrath, who hateth me. He gnasheth upon me with his teeth. Mine enemy sharpeneth his eyes upon me. They have gaped upon me with their mouth, they have smitten me upon the cheek reproachfully. They have gathered themselves together against me. God hath delivered me to the ungodly, and turned me over into the hands of the wicked. I was at ease, but he hath broken me asunder. He hath also taken me by my neck, and shaken me to pieces, and set me up for his mark. His archers compass me round about. He cleaveth my reins asunder, and doth not spare. He poureth out my gall upon the ground. He breaketh me with breach upon breach. He runneth upon me like a giant. I have sewed sackcloth upon my skin, and defiled my horn in the dust. My face is foul with weeping, and on my eyelids is the shadow of death. Not for any injustice in my hands, also my prayer is pure. O earth, cover not thou my blood, and let my cry have no place. Also now, behold, my witness is in heaven, and my record is on high. My friends scorn me, but mine eye poureth out tears unto God. Oh, that one might plead for a man with God, as a man pleadeth for his neighbor. When a few years are come, then I shall go the way whence I shall not return. So, he's in distress. Things are pretty bad for him. And actually that last verse there, he's kind of almost looking forward to death. Kind of like, here in a few years, I'll be dead, and then this will end. But, an interesting point on that, while he's saying that, while he's obviously in such a bad state, that's almost something to look forward to. At the same time, he's retaining his integrity. He is not cursing God like his wife was saying there a couple chapters before. Okay, so basically all that to say, there's been a couple people in the Bible, David and Job are absolute prime examples, who went through a lot of distress. They've had some really big things going on in their lives, some really hard stuff. And so in times of difficulty and distress, it's important for us to remember some vital points. First of all, this is very, very important to remember. God has not forgotten or abandoned us. Vitally important point. Hebrews chapter 13, and verse number 5. Hebrews 13:5. Hebrews 13:5. Let your conversation be without covetousness, and be content with such things as you have. For he hath said, I will never leave thee nor forsake thee. And it's that last phrase I want to focus on. I will never leave thee nor forsake thee. So we have the Lord's promise that he will never leave us, he will never forsake us. And as we know, in both David's case and Job's case, well, thinking especially of Job, at the very time when it seemed like God was nowhere in his life, like God had completely left him and abandoned him, but actually no, God was watching him intently. Like God was watching every detail of this, you know. And so that's a hugely important thing, because a lot of times when we get in distress, when we even get near distress, when things start going wrong, you know, the first thought is, God, where are you? Why have you left me? Where are you? What is this? You know, why am I on my own? And we just need to know and to realize through faith that that's not actually true. God has not left us. He has promised he won't. Second of all, second point, we'll turn back a couple chapters, Hebrews 4. God knows exactly what we're going through. Hebrews chapter number 4, and knows exactly what we're going through, not just in that he's aware of it. Yes, that first point, he will never leave us, he will never forsake us. You know, you could say, okay, he knows what's going on, but does he understand? Like, does he know, does he really know what we're going through? Well, Hebrews chapter 4 and verse number 15. For we have not an high priest, which cannot be touched with the feeling of our infirmities, but was in all points tempted like as we are, yet without sin. So what that says is, yes, he knows. He knows what it's like to lose family. He knows what it's like to grow up in a strange land. You know, sometimes we skip over these details when we're reading the Bible. You know, we know the story so well, it just, you know, it becomes like this little chant, and we can say the chant, but we don't actually put any meaning to it. It's like, no, when he was 2, he picked up and moved to a different country. And then at some later date, after Herod had died, he moved back. You know what that's going to do for your day-to-day, like having friends and knowing people and being able to find your way around? You know, that's kind of a big deal, particularly in childhood. You know, he's been through that. Odds are pretty good he probably got teased as the outsider most of his life. Because that's what happens to people who grow up in places where they're not from. I know, I've done it. You know, the Lord's done that. He's been through that. He's been in situations where he was there doing the Lord's work, carrying on with ministry, and his own family, they didn't get it. They didn't get any of it at all. You know, and there's scriptures that shows that, you know, some of his, at least some of his family, if not all of them, later came to realize, yes, he is the Lord, and to trust him as such. But if I understand it correctly, in a lot of cases, that was probably after he was gone. You know, they hit this point where it's like, oh, that's what he was saying. You know, but the fact is, he's been through these things. He understands that. Tempted in all points, like as we are, yet without sin. And that's the point. It's like, he's had all these hardships, he's had all these temptations, and yet through it all, what makes him amazing is that he got to that same crossroads and he went the other direction. But he was at the crossroads. He's been there. He knows what that decision feels like. Luke chapter number 22 and verse 44. Luke 22:44. Okay, so this is the Lord in the garden. Actually, we'll back up to verse 42. Saying, Father, if thou be willing, remove this cup from me. Nevertheless, not my will, but thine be done. And there appeared an angel unto him from heaven, strengthening him. And being in an agony, he prayed more earnestly. And his sweat was as it were great drops of blood falling down to the ground. He's there. He realizes his mission in life. He realizes that he will very shortly be going to the cross to be made sin for all mankind. And he's in agony. He's in enough agony that he's asking for the cup to be removed. He's saying, Father, please find another way. And yet, what's his ultimate prayer? Not my will, but thine be done. And so, he knows what we're going through. He's been through difficult, very difficult times. He's been through, even though, see, the thing is, when bad things happen to us, we tend to isolate. We tend to pull into our shell. We tend to think, I am the only person in the history of the world that this has ever happened to, and no one else has ever had it this bad before. It's a bit selfish, but that's what we tend to think. And, when you're happy, all the world's a party. It's like, hey, everybody, aren't we all having a great time? But when we're suffering, it's like, just me, by myself, I am suffering, no one else has ever suffered. And it's, I don't know if it's a defense mechanism or what it is, but that's what we do. And we think that no one's done it before, no one's had it like that before. And yet he has. And more so. So he knows what we're going through. And the third point, hugely important, and one we tend to be very quick to forget in such circumstances, or at least I'm quick to forget, is that God is still in control. God is still in control. Just because something bad happened to us doesn't mean that the throne is abandoned, God has fallen, woe is me, something bad happened in my life. Revelations 4 and verse number 11. And this is a beautiful verse. This is what the beasts and the 24 elders are saying as they worship the Lord. Thou art worthy, O Lord, to receive glory and honor and power. For thou hast created all things, and for thy pleasure they are and were created. That is the purpose of all creation. To bring glory and honor and praise and pleasure to the Lord. Does God enjoy our life? Does God enjoy knowing us? Does God enjoy what we're doing? Does he find it pleasant? Is there pleasure to the Lord in the fact that we're alive, that we're there, that we're doing things? There should be. That's the point of creation. That's why God created. Because he wanted to, he enjoyed it. He wants to enjoy it still. And, and that's the whole point of it all. And he's in control. He made it. He is the creator. Isaiah 46. Isaiah 46, 9 and 10. Isaiah 46, 9 and 10. Remember the former things of old, for I am God, and there is none else. I am God, and there is none like me, declaring the end from the beginning, and from ancient times things that are not yet done, saying, my counsel shall stand, and I will do all my pleasure. So a couple things there. And the first is that God, he declares the end from the beginning, meaning at the very beginning of time, before time even began, he knows how these things will end. He knows the beginning. He can declare it from the beginning. And from ancient times, the things that are not yet done. So things that haven't even happened yet. What's going to happen tomorrow, a year from now, a decade from now, 100 years from now? God knew before he created time. So back to it's kind of like that saying at the beginning, but much deeper really, that things don't catch him by surprise. He's outside of time. He created time. He doesn't, we're sitting here on pins and needles. It's like, I got all these things going on. It's like, okay, I've negotiated this job. Is my job offer going to come through? It's like, why didn't it come through yesterday? Is it going to come through tomorrow? Maybe it's going to come, God knows. As a matter of fact, he knew when I'd get the new job and where it'd be and its details before I ever lost the old job. He's not concerned. I'm concerned, but he is not. Because it's not a surprise to him. It didn't catch him unaware. When I walked into that meeting wondering what the world's going on in here, and they're like, oh, you're getting bumped. It was kind of a bit of a shock to me. It wasn't to God. He knew about it. He was prepared. It wasn't like, oh, whoa, big change here. What do we got to do with Ben down there? I mean, that's just happened in his life. Like, no. He knew. It was figured out. And I think that's where we forget that we're humans, but he's God. He's in control. The fact that it's big and shocking and huge on our life, it's not in his. It's really not. He's got it figured out. And I guess the other thing there, my counsel shall stand, and I will do all my pleasure. God's going to work it out the way he wants it worked out. It's not going to be like, well, Ben, I tried really hard to get you this nice job over here that I liked, and I thought that would work for you, but, well, so-and-so didn't cooperate, and so that didn't work out. No. If he wants me to have that, I'll have that. Because that's who God is. That's what he is. Psalm 135. Psalm 135. And verses 5 and 6. So there's a lot of Psalms, particularly in the later end of the Psalms, that are just about praising the Lord. And it's an amazing thing to read through. And just the stuff the psalmist comes up with, praise God for this and praise God for this. And an awful lot of it boils down to praising God, yes, for what he's done, but also for who he is. Yeah. And I think a lot of us, particularly in Western cultures, we lose track, we base our life on what we do, not who we are. And I think that affects our Christianity as well, because we get this idea that who I am as a Christian is what I do. It's not. Christianity isn't about what you do, it's about who you are, and more importantly, about who God is. When he announced himself to the children of Israel, he didn't come up and say, I do. Tell them that I do sent you. That's not what he said. He said, tell them I am sent you. Yeah. Anyway, that was a side note. I don't know how I got on that. 35, 5 and 6. For I know that the Lord is great, and that our Lord is above all gods. Whatsoever the Lord pleased, that did he in heaven, and in earth, in the seas, and all deep places. And it goes on about a lot of other things related to creation and so on and so forth. But just want to point out, whatsoever the Lord pleased, that did he in heaven, and in earth, in the seas, and all deep places. As people, a lot of times, when I was a small child, going to be most likely to get in a terrible fit, a terrible temper, it's when they're not allowed to do what they want to do. And I think, okay, some of us, we grow, we mature, we learn to subdue that, but deep inside there's still the angry 2-year-old screaming because I wanted to do that and you stopped me. Well, two things on this. One, all of us need, in 2 years old on up, we need to learn to submit. We need to learn that we are not, in fact, God. We are not the one who gets their own way in this and that and the other. But it's also to remember, that the Lord, he does what he pleases in heaven and earth and the seas. And just to realize that he is in control. He has that level of control. He is God. And, sometimes they say, don't state the obvious. And yet I find more and more it's important to state the obvious because we forget that it's obvious. We forget that God is God. Therefore, he can do anything. He is not limited. He is God. Right. And it's the most basic principle. I mean, we teach it in Sunday school. And yet, sometimes as we grow up, it's like, oh yeah, God is God. Oh, why is this happening? How could this, my life is falling apart. Where are you? Sometimes the adults need to go back to Sunday school and learn from the toddlers. At least that's the case for me sometimes. The fourth point, and this is the last point, I don't know what time do we usually get to, 12:30? Till then. Okay, if anybody needs a stretch break, take a stretch break. Fourth point, God will work it out for our good and for his glory. Romans 8:28. Romans 8:28, and I suspect most of us know this verse, but there's having memorized the verse, and then there's actually recalling and applying, and that is another thing altogether. It says, and we know that all things work together for good to them that love God, to them who are the called according to his purpose. We know that all things work together for good to them that love God. Now there is a caveat, there is to them that love God, but assuming we're Christians, assuming we are trying to do the right thing, and then bolt out of the blue, our life explodes, This is a verse that very much applies to us. We know that all things work together for good. Now, an important thing that I came across a while ago, and was a very, very important thought and very, very good to think about. We know that all things work together for good. And the point was this: God reserves the right to define what is good. God reserves the right to define what is good. And that's something we forget. That's something we lose track of. We have our little happy box definition of God. This is what's good in my life. My income will look like this. My house will look like this. I'll have this type of friends. I'll go to these types of places. And this is my definition. So God, everything must work out to look like this definition. No, that's not how it works. God reserves the right to define what is good. And it is good, and it will be good, and in some cases, we'll just have to trust Him that it will be. Trust Him that that's really what He said it would be. And then Job chapter 42. So we'll go and we'll look at the end of the book of Job here and how it all worked out. Spoiler alert, it ended out very good fun. Job chapter 42, verses 10 through 17. And the Lord turned the captivity of Job when he prayed for his friends. Also the Lord gave Job twice as much as he had before. Then came there unto him all his brethren and all his sisters, and all they that had been of his acquaintance before, and did eat bread with him in his house, and they bemoaned him and comforted him over all the evil that the Lord had brought upon him. Every man also gave him a piece of money, and every one an earring of gold. So the Lord blessed the latter end of Job more than his beginning, for he had 14,000 sheep, and 6,000 camels, and 1,000 yoke of oxen, and 1,000 she-asses. He had also 7 sons and 3 daughters. And he called the name of the first Jemimah, and the name of the second Keziah, and the name of the third Karen-Happuch. And in all the land were no women found so fair as the daughters of Job, and their father gave them inheritance among their brethren. After this lived Job 140 years, and saw his sons and his sons' sons, even 4 generations. So Job died, being old and full of days. So long and short of it, Job gets to the end, and the Lord blesses him greatly. Twice as much as everything he had before. And he was the richest man in the land before. And now he's got twice as much as being the richest man in the land. And so, God worked it out for Job. And I guess the thing to remember, both in looking at that and in our situations, God working it out, God working out for our good, for His glory, that doesn't necessarily mean money. People think, oh, it's all going to work out. Oh, we're going to be rich. No, that's not the same thing. And, sometimes in the Old Testament it was. In Job, it obviously was. God had taken away all his things, and when it worked out, God gave him back all his things with interest. Pretty good interest, actually. And so basically, but to remember that, like we were saying before, it's God's right to define what is good. And good doesn't necessarily mean rich. But God will work it out, and He will be glorified by it. And in the book of Job, it doesn't really explicitly say it, but we know that Job passed the test. We know that Job was given a test, and basically, the Lord had said to Satan, hey, look at Job, he's a good guy. And he said, oh, he just does it for the stuff. I said, okay, let's take away all the stuff, see if he still does it. Took away all the stuff, he still did it. And so that's an important thing, that, even though, maybe Job did or didn't ever know anything about all this, but he passed the test, he stayed the course, and ultimately, God was glorified. By Joseph? No. Moving on to the conclusion here. God uses stress in our lives to bring us nearer to Him and to teach us to depend on Him. He also uses it as a witness to the lost and even to the angels. Job, for instance. It was, it was there in a meeting of the angels where this little back and forth between the Lord and the devil was going on. We don't hear from about any of the rest of it, but it was a witness to every angel in there, and it sounded like it was some sort of angel convention or something. Like, this didn't happen in a quiet corner. This was like in the center of heaven. Everybody sees what's going on. Job's up on the big screen. Like, what's he going to do now? And he passed. And, that's something to remember, and particularly as relates to the lost who were around. I mean, when we're going through hard times and we handle it correctly, we wait on the Lord. We turn to Him. We say, I'm not going to blow up at these people. I'm not going to go off on those people over there. I know God's in control. He knows what He's doing. I'm going to be calm and trust Him. That's a witness to the lost. They don't have that. They can't do that. Job 23. The other thing the times like these do is God uses these events to prepare us for future tasks. An old preacher I had when I was growing up, he said that life is like school in a lot of ways. You have a lesson, and you have a test. You pass the test, you go on. If you fail the test, you got to retake it. And that's something to keep in mind. It's like, keep right, do the right thing, pass the test. And so that's important to remember that way, and to know that God uses these things to prepare us for what He has for us in the future. Chapter 23, verses 8 through 10. Job speaking. Behold, I go forward, but He is not there, and backward, but I cannot perceive Him. On the left hand, where He doth work, but I cannot behold Him. He hideth Himself on the right hand, that I cannot see Him. But He knoweth the way that I take. When He hath tried me, I shall come forth as gold. So Job, he's in this situation, he cannot perceive God. It's like he's seeking God, he's longing after God, he wants to feel the presence of God. And he goes forward and can't feel God there. He goes back, he can't feel God there. He goes right and left, and he just feels very alone. He feels that God's not there with him. And yet, verse number 10, a massive statement of faith from somebody who can't feel God's presence. He says, but He knoweth the way that I take. When He hath tried me, I shall come forth as gold. He says, God, I can't feel you anywhere. I want to. I want to feel that you're near, and yet I can't. You don't seem to be anywhere. And yet I'm going to trust that you know what you're doing, that you are directing all of this, and that ultimately I'm going to come forth as gold. And so that's a massive statement of faith, and that's an important thing when waiting on God. It's like when you can't feel His presence, you just have to trust Him. You have to trust Him that He knows what He's doing, that He is in control, and that this is going to be for good. Isaiah 30, verse number 21. I'll just read some of these quickly. I think time's getting on here. Isaiah 30:21. And thine ears shall hear a word behind thee, saying, This is the way, walk ye in it. When ye turn in the right hand, when ye turn in the left. And so this is kind of moving on from Job. So Job knew that God was directing things, but he couldn't feel his presence. And then this is more kind of going on to, okay, now somebody's hearing from God. They're hearing that this is the way, walk this way. And so then the faith is that, okay, God is directing me. I will go the way he's telling me. I don't know where this ends, but he's telling me go this direction. And so that's important too. And Joshua 1:9. Be strong and of a good courage. Be not afraid, neither be thou dismayed, for the Lord thy God is with thee, whithersoever thou goest. And in Joshua 1 and the surrounding chapters, be strong and of a good courage. It's said over and over again. Be strong. Be of a good courage. Of a good courage. That's the same as being courageous. Be brave. What is courage? What is he saying? Be strong and have a good courage. What is courage? Courage. Well, one person defined it as courage is being scared to death, but saddling up anyway. Courage isn't the absence of fear. Courage is knowing what's right and doing it in spite of fear. And that's often what waiting on the Lord is involved with. It's like, God's, okay, at first we're just kind of feeling, and God can't sense you anywhere, but I know this is you. I know you're doing something, even though I can't feel you here. And then it's, okay, then God starts to speak. Now he's saying a way. He's saying, this is the way, walk ye in it. And then it's, be strong and have a good courage. You've got to be brave and continue on in this way that you've been shown, even though it can be frightening at times. Proverbs 3, 5, and 6. Trust in the Lord with all thine heart, and lean not unto thine own understanding. In all thy ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct thy paths. He's leading us. And there's the importance of, in all thy ways acknowledge him. It's like, okay, this is what I want to do, but God, what is your will? What do you want? And just acknowledging him in everything. It's like, every Christian, there's the general will of God and there's the specific will of God. Like, every Christian should tithe. Every Christian should not lie. Every Christian should not swear. There are certain things that we know we're all supposed to do. And in all thy ways acknowledge him. Well, in our ways, in the ways we go in our life, are we acknowledging him? It's like, this would be the Christian thing to do. Well, is that what you do? You know it's the Christian thing to do. Is that how you do it? Is that how you handle it? Because there's Job, and basically for pretty much a whole book, he's left to his own devices. It's like he can't feel the presence of God. He feels like God has utterly abandoned him, and yet he's on the spotlight. It's like, will he do the right thing on his own? And ultimately the answer was yes. And, sometimes God does that. Sometimes we do that with children. It's like, you have a child, they're doing something, and maybe they're trying to tie their shoes or some other little task. And I don't know if other parents do this or if this is just, scientists in me or something darker. But sometimes I'll sit back and I'll watch. And they're struggling, and I can see they're struggling. And part of me wants to step in and tie their shoes and just get on with it. And yet the other part of me realizes I am very literally not going to be there to tie their shoes for them their entire life. So sooner or later, they're going to have to figure it out. And the way they're going to have to figure it out is struggle. And sometimes it's like that with things God brings in our lives too. It's like, sometimes we gotta struggle a little bit. And, I think most parents, if they got to the point where they just burst out in tears, they can't tie their shoes, I think most parents would step in and tie their shoes. And, okay, next time we'll let them try it a bit. And eventually they'll get it. But they need some of that struggle, and maybe it's the same with us too. Maybe God knows we need a little struggle to help us learn how to tie our shoes. Just a thought. So in times of distress, we are to wait on the Lord. We are to trust Him and trust that He knows what He's doing, and that we can count on Him to work it all out for good. We are to remember that above all else, our lives are to bring glory to Him. He that keepeth Israel neither slumbers nor sleeps. Nothing ever comes up while God is away having a rest. He already knows our needs and will provide what is best in His time. So in closing, let's just read Psalms 121. Psalm 121, the Song of Degrees. I will lift up mine eyes unto the hills, from whence cometh my help. My help cometh from the Lord, which made heaven and earth. He will not suffer thy foot to be moved. He that keepeth thee will not slumber. Behold, he that keepeth Israel shall neither slumber nor sleep. The Lord is thy keeper. The Lord is thy shade upon thy right hand. The sun shall not smite thee by day, nor the moon by night. The Lord shall preserve thee from all evil. He shall preserve thy soul. The Lord shall preserve thy going out and thy coming in from this time forth and even forevermore. Amen. So we'll pray in closing. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for your word and for your goodness to us. Thank you, Lord, for who you are and for what you do, but most of all for who you are and for who you are as our God, and that you are all-knowing and all-seeing and all-powerful. And we ask that you would help us as we wait on you for the things in our lives and for the things here in the church's life as well, Lord God. We ask that you would give us patience and strengthen our faith, that we trust in you and not in ourselves.